Distributech 2023, one of the sponsors of these interviews, and these are interviews with thought leaders from around North America and the globe. Our sponsors are H2Scan. H2Scan is the leading sensor manufacturer for hydrogen sensing in a lot of different applications, in transformers, in battery room safety, in processes and safety, in industrial, and in the future hydrogen economy. So I want to thank our sponsors, and I want to thank all of our guests, and I hope you enjoy this interview. So my next guest is Nathan Yang. He's the Chief Product Officer at Flow Technologies. Flow is an EV station provider, right?
Yeah, we provide EV charging, and we provide EV charging networks as well, so we do the whole gamut.
So my first question for you is, how'd you get into the power industry?
Yeah, it's interesting. I had the opportunity to work in the test and measurement industry, and the fleet management software industry, even in connected home industry.
Okay.
And a recruiter candidly reached out and said, you know, that there's an industry that's the confluence of tech, mobility, residential as well, and we think we need a lot of help from a design, from an engineering, from a product perspective, and found out that the company was available and the position was available, and I jumped in right in. And it's been an exciting ride working on sustainable technology.
Was your background in product design?
My background is electrical engineering, so I have an affinity to power and electronics, but I diverged into software. I diverged also into design for the user experiences, and you know, EV charging and EV space is the confluence of mobility experience and power. And
see, it had to get sexy enough for you to come in, because all you electronics guys didn't want to come into the utility industry, and they've sucked you in and they will not let you go. Do you know that?
It's a fascinating industry.
Isn't it?
I'll say, yeah.
So tell me about Flow and kind of in the Reader's Digest version of, everybody knows what EVs and EV charging is all about. Tell me specifically about Flow and how you got started and where things are.
Flow started in Eastern Canada, in Quebec City. Primarily started building hardware, EV charging hardware, starting with level 2 charging, right? And then we got into DC fast charging and residential. We're known for the hardware, but we do much more. We also have the cloud services that manage the charging stations, the cloud services that also power the networks that people might use on their phone and mobile apps. And then we also manage our own Flow charging network. So some customers buy our chargers and use it. Other customers, like EV drivers, will use our app to charge at our own chargers.
Okay, excellent. We're going to get a little bit more into Flow in the future and how EV charging is, but before we get there, last year we were doing interviews at IEEE PEST&D, say those acronyms, and then we did some at Renewable Energy. Every problem we asked people to say, what are the issues in the industry? It was the same one, supply chain. Okay, supply chain issues are still there. I imagine you all, because you have to be chip-centric.
Absolutely.
Supply chain issues are still there, but there are, I guess there seems to be an escalation or a speed of change that's happening more so, and especially in your area. I mean, when states say, hey, we're not going to sell any more internal combustion engine cars, I think it's by 2030, is that right in California?
Yeah, it depends on state and jurisdiction.
Yeah, but I think it's 2030 or 2040. They're not going to sell any internal combustion cars. So that means there are going to be a lot of electric cars on the road and a lot of charging stations. So that's big enough change there. But step back a minute, and you have to look at change from a more global perspective, right? So when you look at it, what are the issues other than EV charging issues that you think utilities are having to deal with today, besides supply chain?
I think reliability overall, and so end-to-end reliability. I live in Texas.
You just had another freeze.
I just had another freeze. I lost power for 26 hours.
Are you in Austin?
I'm in Austin, exactly. And I was huddled in my Tesla, doing video calls in my car, trying to keep warm. So I think reliability is a challenge, and it's everything from generation, distribution, obviously down to the charging for us in our industry. Reliability is top. I think the other aspect is the user experience. It's been a challenge, I think, from holistic from a, people think about user experience as the design of the object, the iPhone, or the design of the app, the software, but it's also the service that you get. Power is a service that you get, and depending on what you're trying to charge or what you're trying to use the power for, you have an expectation for that service. And if something doesn't go wrong, what is the type of service you get? So, the couple of things that are top of mind for me and for us is reliability and the experience for the end users. Supply chain has been a big challenge. I will say, as an industry, we try to use rugged chipsets that are not the cutting edge, so they're older fabs, and we all know the fabs are in Asia. Those are starting to get alleviated, but I think that shift of the world is flat, production is all in one place or is becoming more distributed now. I think we're approaching a healthier hybrid model of supply chain. And so I see that trend continuing. So hopefully, knock on wood, there's no wood here, but supply chain issues and things won't be as severe as we've encountered in the last 2 to 3 years.
So let's talk about one of the areas that your part of the industry is creating. We've had this level demand for the last 15 years in power, right? All of a sudden it's a hockey stick. We've got this, and electrification of transportation is creating a lot of that. So, as you see that hockey stick taking place, we kind of thought we knew where that end was, and now it seems like it's
accelerating.
Oh yeah, it's incredible, which I love to see, because change creates a need to change, right?
Yes.
The utility industry has been reluctant to change.
Yep.
As you do what you do, you touch all parts of the utility industry, right? Talk about that reluctance to change and how you help utilities, whether that be a localized utility, whether that be by supporting somebody who pulls power from it. But just talk about how do you get your services, your product, because you mentioned what you do is not just the hardware anymore.
Yep.
You're doing a lot of different things now, and you're working maybe a little bit more integrated with utilities.
Absolutely. Yep.
How are you seeing them adopt to your change?
To your point about change, I think Bloomberg and EF said that the EV adoption is 2.3 or 2.4x what even their own predictions were. So to your point about the hockey stick, right? Yeah. Absolutely, it's hockey sticking. And we work with utilities on, for example, energy management is a big topic.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The hypothesis is that maybe energy generation is less of a problem, it's more the distribution, and so we have to nurse the grid and make sure that, and energy management could be a big tool for that. And it's explaining and helping understand what are the use cases and what are the segments for EV charging and how those things might impact the grid. As an example, most people should be charging when they're sleeping. Cars is parked there, not being used. And most of the time, you're not filling your gas up tank every day, right? You're only filling up once a week or twice, depending on your frequency. Same thing with charging. At night, you're plugging in every night, but you only need to charge 20 minutes, 30 minutes a night. So when you charge the 20, 30 minutes a night, the utility can absolutely influence that, right? And then how can we give the tools to utilities to be able to do that? Public charging is different. If you're driving, I'm from Austin, if I'm driving from Austin to Dallas, I don't want to end up at a charger, the fast charger that's being throttled by the utility, right? Because I want to get to Dallas as soon as possible. And so then it's working with the utility and trying to understand, well, what kind of power can you bring and what other solutions can we offer, like on-site storage, to try to mitigate that demand and help the utility shade that peak and help manage that distribution network.
Henry Ford had a dilemma when he started making more cars than the guy built on a bench, right? Suddenly he's producing a lot of cars. Well, his dilemma was he could produce all the cars in the world if he had gasoline, right? The Stanley steamer had wood and water everywhere.
Same thing with tires and rubber, right?
So the Henry Ford dilemma, the first one I talk about is he met with the Standard Oil Rockefeller and said, look, I'll put a dealership if you'll put a gas station there. And lo and behold, there's gas stations on every corner. We still have that same dilemma because people are going to be buying EVs at an increasing rate. And now fleet EVs are coming at an increasing rate. And they're going to be rate dependent upon having charging stations around the country, because you're not going to take a trip from Atlanta, where I live, to Austin, Texas, without knowing exactly where I'm going to get charging, right? I don't worry about in my Lexus that takes gasoline, because I know there's a zillion places. That is a macro problem, but how does Flow see that and how do we solve that problem?
Make EV charging available, accessible, for everybody.
Should we have EV charging like Airbnb that I can pull into somebody else's garage?
That could be
That's
part of
a
it.
great
That is
idea.
part of the solution, and in fact, we're uniquely positioned to do that because we offer residential chargers and public chargers.
Yeah.
It's not just us. Other players in the market do that as well. And absolutely, we could, if you live in a dense urban area, you put your charger near the the curbside of the street. You could add it to an Airbnb-like app, a Flow app or other apps, and make it available. Absolutely. And the key thing is access, meaning, for example, in certain cities, I was just in Dallas recently, it was almost only DC fast chargers inside the city.
Okay.
Those are more expensive to charge per kilowatt hour.
Right.
Meanwhile, you have garage orphans or others who don't have a home and don't have a convenient place to park. They need to have access to level 2 charging. And level 2 charging has less demand on the grid, as you know. It helps flatten the curve. And so the solution is to make sure that you have a diverse set of charging solutions to be able to meet the customer where they're at in the communities. And so that's why we did a partnership with General Motors for the dealer community program. So we're able to install chargers in the communities so communities can have access and not only rely on expensive DC fast chargers, which have impacts on the grid.
I read an article recently, I can't remember where I read it, and it talked about the discrimination against apartment dwellers because they don't have they don't have a garage to put an EV charging station in. And it was like, who's going to take care of them? And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, another problem that we've got to overcome.
And that problem is interesting because it's not just the wiring of electricity and how you build to the right unit, but homeowners associations or condo associations or apartment associations, you have to get them to agree, and so there's other challenges there as well for that.
Let's talk about Flow a little bit, because you said you started in the hardware business and now you're kind of like you're in everything. As if it's got EV charging in it, it's in everything. And so as a chief product officer for that, now you're dealing with hardware, you're dealing with software, you're dealing with network of a lot of different things. The scope and scale of change at Flow, tell me how you all are handling that.
It's challenging, it's exciting. I think, as a leader of a decently large size organization, like you said, we have a diverse set of talent, skill set in the company. There's no better industry to work with because everybody's so passionate and motivated for it, right? If you have a group of passionate and motivated teammates and employees, it makes the conversation so much easier because they believe in the vision and believe in the mission. I think not only is it the hardware, software, and the network and deliver that network services, but I think to tie some of your questions together, EV charging is sort of the confluence of not just the utilities and distribution of power, but also car manufacturers who are trying to figure out their place in this world. Big tech, Apple and Google and Amazon and Microsoft are trying to maybe control a little bit more of the demand of charging and power through their Apple Maps and Google Maps, for example, and software like that. Site hosts and real estate, they're the ones hosting the chargers. And so they want to bring chargers for other reasons. For example, try to get them to dwell a little bit longer and maybe buy more blueberries at the grocery store, right? or something like that. And so this is where the demand for software just increases exponentially because we want to offer energy management for the utilities. We want to offer maybe the ability to find a charger, a reliable and suitable charger for your vehicle inside the vehicle infotainment center. We want to offer maybe some advertising for the retailer who's offering their site to host the chargers. And all those things are powered by software and services. And so and I think this is an area that, because it's forcing change, I think it allows us to maybe leave behind some of the legacy and create something new that's, I compare Blockbuster versus Netflix, right? Like that, leave behind maybe a little bit of the Blockbuster model and move into a new era of distribution and of EV charging.
I think they were offered to buy Netflix for $500 million and they told them it was a joke, right? And now there is no Blockbuster. And Netflix valuation, I think, is around $200 billion. But so we're going to get back to Flow at the end here for a minute, but I want to switch gears again a little bit. One of the big problems is silos, and it's happening in EV charging a little bit, where there's different. See, if I go to a gas station anywhere in America and I need to plug in gas, the nozzle fits the hose pipe, right? They've standardized all of that. We're yet to be there with EV charging, which creates a lot of frustration for consumers. I am one. I rented a Tesla.
Yep.
I didn't know there was a Tesla charging station nearby. I went to another place and it was a slow charger, and I couldn't use it. It didn't fit. Incredibly frustrated to say, now how do now I feel like I'm panicking, right? I'm going to run out of juice. I think I had 78%. It's just the problem, right?
Yep.
We want to make sure it's always 100. But that problem with the lack of a standard that we can say, hey, look, I'm going to charge my car in Baltimore and I'm going to charge it in Texas, and it's the same charging thing. How do you deal with that as an industry?
We try to push for standardization as much as possible.
But you want to standardize to your standard?
We want to standardize to whatever standard the industry is driving
good.
for.
All right.
And so
push for you guys be the central push for the standard.
Example. So CSS Combo is a connector for any vehicle that's not a Tesla, right? Okay. Almost every vehicle that's not a Tesla. CHAdeMO is starting to dwindle down in terms of adoption. Now Tesla just opened up their connector, their Tesla connectors. And so we're working with Tesla to try to get access to them. And we ideally, Tesla has a habit of maybe announcing a little bit sooner what they're actually gonna do.
Waiting on the truck.
Yeah, but as soon as it's made available, and it is, we plan to offer that connector on our chargers. Same thing on the back end on the API side. We want to have standardized APIs so utilities can communicate with us and say, hey, can you lower your demand a little bit, please? Because I need some help. Right, and standardization is absolutely. There's a protocol called OCPP, which is the communication protocol between a service and the charger itself. We run on standardized on those standardized protocols to make sure that others can communicate with our chargers as well.
Excellent. Glad to see that there's work on that. You mentioned something, and I want to go back to it. One of the other problems we see is this huge problem with staffing. Now, you guys are in a sexy industry. You don't have a hard time getting people because people want to work in the sexy parts of the industry. But in truth, this next generation of employee, a technical person I'm talking about, they want to know that they're working to make a difference, right? Obviously, we're decarbonizing when you're doing what you're doing there. But how do you all keep staff? Because one of the other things is they're job hoppers.
Absolutely.
Because you got to, hey, we're motivated, we're doing this, but hey, you've been working for 2 years, you just figured out where the toilet is, now you're going to leave me to go somewhere else. How does your organization deal with staffing issues?
We are a hybrid work environment. So even though we're headquartered in Eastern Canada and Quebec City, we have employees all over North America. I'm based out of Austin. We have some folks in Boston, in Vancouver, in different places. We just opened a new facility in Auburn Hills, Michigan. So we're hiring quite a bit of people there. So I think hybrid helps meet the employee where they are. And then maybe once a quarter, every so often, see each other face to face, because there's nothing that builds more trust than the face to face. The other thing, we're fortunate to have a very strong, I would say, an attractive vision and mission. We want to drive EV adoption and help address the problem of global warming, and a lot of employees join because they're passionate about that. And as we all know, people, leave jobs because they don't feel the job fulfilling, right?
That's number
so
one
we
reason.
absolutely need to do that. Training and give them access to grow their career and job opportunities. So I think it's a confluence of many different things to try to give that to them. But I would say the work is above all, I think. It's something that attracted me to the role, right? I had worked in many companies where we would build products that fill landfills, for example, with planned obsolescence. We know the automotive industry created planned obsolescence, right? With the Alfred Sloan, I think, was president of General Motors and famously did that. And as with the grid, as with power generation, as with EV charging, you want whatever you install, you want to last a long period of time, because it provides a high uptime and a good experience to the customers, but also it's lower cost to maintain and manage. So yeah, I would say it's a combination of things.
Last question. You're no longer in the product development guy. You're on an airplane with me. We're at 35,000 feet, and I say, Nathan, you're a thought leader. What do things look like 10 years from now? What are the storms on the horizon that the industry ought to be thinking about?
The storms out of the horizon. I'm hoping that day supply chain problems are gone. Right. EV charging problems are gone. It's EV easier and abundant. I'm hoping that even power generation, power distribution is no longer too much of a problem.
It will be, but
Yeah. And beyond that, I think, trying to get into solving the next set of problems for a more sustainable future, right? Because if you look at power or even automotive, we went from this economy of extracting commodities out of the ground like agriculture. Then we built goods like the Model T, and then we started servicing those vehicles. And now we're in the experience economy. Everything is an experience. So you get, most people buy EVs. If you survey them, is it to save money? Is it for the environment? And they'll tell you no, it's because I want the digital experience. I want to stream Spotify in the car. I want acceleration. And so I'm hoping that we will have more democratized access to all the experiences and all the needs of our population, but also that we can build it in a sustainable way for the future. That's economically sustainable, that's environmentally sustainable, and it won't be solved in 10 years, but I'm hoping that the conversation will move to other topics where the grid and perhaps the EV electrification of mobility could also help address.
excellent, good. So it's been a delight. Thank you so much for joining, Matthew. Appreciate it very much. This has been an APC Technologies production, and we thank you for joining us. Our sponsors have been H2Scan and Distributech, and of course, the communities of APC Technologies, which is Transform Technology, Power Systems Technology, Green Energy Technology, and Women in Power Systems. So thank you.